That was so average. Come on, I know it's just before tea break, but how's everybody doing?
Yeah.
All right, let's get a little bit of energy in here. Parag,
Yeah.
wonderful to be working with you again, mate.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank
you very
you.
much for giving us this opportunity to ask a few questions, learn a little bit about your adventures in digital risk and digital transformation. But actually, before I start asking you some questions and your experiences over the years working for companies like Wipro, working for RSA, and also working recently with American Express, I actually wanted to ask the audience a few questions. So in getting prepared for this, I did a little bit of research on American Express as an organization and a company you've worked with for many years now. Does anyone know, and please, this isn't the activity before where we had to pick up our phones, without looking at your phone, does anyone know, or can anyone take a guess at when American Express was first founded? Roughly what year? Sorry, up the back, speak up. Did you say 1850? You'd be correct. Yes, absolutely, 1850. And just in the interest of me actually hearing the responses, the next question I was going to ask, if anyone knows what American Express's core business was. Obviously, everyone knows American Express for payments, but did you know that they actually started out as a company, as a shipping company, a fast shipping company out of 1850? So
that's the reason it was called Express.
That's where the name Express comes from, exactly. So that's actually a little bit of trivia I picked up this morning, and I thought was pretty cool. I guess another question, maybe just for you.
Yeah.
How many branches does American Express have?
I mean, can you all guess how many branches American Express has globally? Any guesses? How many branches Amex has? Amex is also a bank. 0. Yeah, you're right.
Sir, in the
0.
front row. Good job, good job.
0. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So 0. So obviously no small feat for such a well-known organization that many of us carry cards for or do business with or book travel with, whatever it might be. No small feat there, and obviously digital is a key enabler of being able to operate such a well-known company with such a small physical storefront footprint for your customers. So hopefully a few insights there to share with everybody. Final bit of trivia for the audience. You may not know this, but Parag is actually one of the very first Archer certified administrators in the India region. So
right.
Very cool little
Thank
accolade
you.
there.
Thank
So
you.
where were you working at the time that you
So,
achieved that?
I was working with Wipro at that time, and Wipro had tied up with Archer. It wasn't RSA at that time. It was still owned by John Derbyshire. It started with EY partner starting the company. John Derbyshire started it. So that time I was one of the first ones in Wipro also to get the certification, and we started working on Archer. So I have long association with RSA products. So that is one of the reasons I'm very passionate to speak today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for that, Parag. Now, he's mentioned Archer a few times. Obviously, we're known now as RSA Archer, so Parag's relationship with the company actually predates RSA's acquisition of Archer. But I guess the focus of today is really to talk about Parag's adventures in digital transformation and digital risk. There were some insights shared this morning from our Chief Marketing Officer, Holly Rollo, from the Digital Risk Index that I think are relevant to the conversation that we're about to have. Most organizations through the Digital Risk Index identified that their organization have a digital agenda. Almost all identified that their digital agenda is accelerating. 41% said that their risk profile has changed significantly in the last 2 years as a result of that, and 48% say it's likely to change significantly more in the next 2 years as a result of that. So things are certainly accelerating there. In fact, we ran a roundtable yesterday for some of our customers to talk about the topic of risk culture, and I asked people in the room a question I'd asked over the last few years in those sorts of forums. Does your organization have a digital agenda? And most people laughed, right? Because it's obviously most companies do have that now. But then I asked another question, okay, so how connected to that digital agenda as risk practitioners are you? And the room went a little bit silent, right? So I think there's some work to do there to bridge the gap between the initiatives that the business is rolling out and the work that the risk, compliance and security teams are undertaking. The Digital Risk Index also highlighted that the top 2 digital risks that were observed or that organisations are worried about. Number 1, the risk of a cyber attack. So no surprises there. Number 2, risks associated with a dynamic workforce. So Parag, given your experiences working in the field, what would you say are the top 1 or 2 risks that you think are most relevant for Indian organisations?
So yes, I have worked in Amex, but Amex India also, a lot of projects I have worked on. So counterintuitive to what we are speaking, the digital is not just about automation and taking, you must have seen today's Times of India this morning, a page-long ad of American Express about a metal card. And I was talking to the engineering team of RSA, and it's so counterintuitive to what they were saying. They were saying form factor of credit card perhaps is they were not saying it, but I think it appears to all of us that it is a thing of past. But really, if you see, why is metal card being so sought after, or why it is being looked at something that is accepted, and it was a big success in US. The reason being that digital is not just about automating alone, it's about the customer experience. And I think that is where customers feel great about owning a metal card, having that metal charge card, platinum charge card as a thing of pride.
Yeah.
And I think that is a customer experience I need to be careful about, and I should honor that.
Yeah, it's
so I think
a bit of a status symbol in some cases.
It's a status symbol sometimes. If that's what they look at our product, we need to know, we need to be aware of it, and we need to honor it rather than just taking the credit card away and making it completely digital.
Yeah.
So to that extent, I think coming back to your question there, I think there were 2 areas where I've seen. First is, again, cyber attack is no-brainer. It is definitely one of the biggest malware threats, and we just recently spoke about one of the chat product where I had a chat in the middle attack. So I'm not going to take the name of the company, but it is anybody's guess again. Chat in the middle attack, it's there, right? And that's one of the biggest issues that we have in this part of the world and anywhere in the world, I think. The second, I would say the dynamic workforce you spoke about, I think it's outsourcing. In a lot of Indian companies, if you see how many of banks are here and how many of you have your contact center insourced. Most of our large banks, contact center is outsourced. And imagine, I worked in identity and access management for a bank globally for American Express. And I can tell you the contact center agent sitting at the front door has the maximum access. And that guy is outsourced. And I think you look at the amount of risk that are you doing that due diligence? I think these are the 2 most important areas from my standpoint.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much for sharing that. Maybe not going back as far as the 1850s, but looking over the last few years, how do you think the payment industry's changed? I certainly have seen an incredible amount of change here, specifically in India. But what about your perspective as someone working in that industry?
So I think talking about US and global, US has been very slow in adopting chip and pin also, and OTP is still not there. But we'll take US out of the picture. The rest of the world, Australia was one of the, which is your home country, has been the earliest adopter of OTP other than India. And before we go to Australia, I wanted to, talk about an Indian regulator. Today Indian regulator is so active, so ahead of time that, OTP was mandated way back in 2009. And at that time, people used to say that, hey, a regulatory change is unpredictable. I don't know how my business is going to do. Today, if you go ask the same question about the regulators in the payment industry in India, I think they say that our regulators are leading us to the new technology. Look at what NPCI has done. And it's not something that people are not able to predict anymore. They know where NPCI is going, where RBI is going, and many of the startups are just waiting for RBI notification to come. For example, CKYC or eKYC, it's just waiting for RBI's notification to come out. Yep. So they know exactly where regulatory space is going. Isn't that a great achievement for the market like India?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think in terms of the UK, US, Australia, I think Australia then later on kind of lagged a little bit in adoption, and UK took over. And UK perhaps is the earliest adopter of many of the new concepts that are coming. And still, I think India is the number one still. But number two perhaps is, I mean, there's no study, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But UK also is great adopter amongst the rest of the organizations.
Well, if it's anything like the cricket at the moment, I think Australia is going to gradually start to climb back up the list.
Yeah, it was promising.
Yeah.
The Ashes were promising.
That's it. Yeah. So looking back over some of your recent experiences, have you had to change the way that you approach managing risk given the changing technological environment that you work in?
So yes, as I told you, I manage 3 different teams, identity and access management team globally for American Express and for all 23 countries, all the applications. I also manage a second team which is regulatory RegTech product owner team. RegTech other than AML and KYC, so there's a lot other than that, talk about regulatory issue and corrective action plan management, you talk about a customer complaint management, these are all still regulatory stuff which we don't look at more carefully. So all the sexy stuff remains in US, everything else I get here in India. So I do a lot of regulatory tech stuff here as well. And the third team that I manage is digital servicing, the chat, live chat, chatbot, and mobile messaging. So another thing, I spoke about Amex launching a metal card in India. The other thing that we have launched is the customer service agent supported mobile chat. So you can go to, if you're an Amex customer, go to mobile app, you can chat with our agent and you can do whatever you can do on the phone through a chat, except canceling your card because for that you have to call. Everything else you can do through a chat. I think no other company in India has a customer agent supported chat to the extent that American Express has been able to implement. So we went ahead with the customer experience first, and as a next step, we perhaps will bring the chatbot, but it's not chatbot first. Yep. It's customer first, and then a chatbot wherever customer likes us to have the chatbot. For example, customer don't want us to, talk to an agent to get the balance on the card. But if they want to dispute a transaction, they would like to talk to an agent or chat with an agent.
Yep.
So we're looking at all that, and then we are slowly introducing that. So I think looking at what customer needs, what our internal needs are from identity and access management perspective, we're looking at user experience, whether it is colleague, whether it is customer, and then we have to adapt to what technology is going to give us that opportunity.
Yep. I think certainly speaking with a lot of our customers around the region, looking at some of the emerging risks and the emerging challenges there that you've had to work through, there's certainly a desire to embrace technology to actually make those problems easier to manage. So it goes full circle. We work with a lot of our customers with RSA Archer to help automate and drive workflows and speed up some of those processes. But what's been your experience in actually using technology to manage that digital risk itself?
So I think I'm going to give you a very good example of how we have used technology to manage some of the risk processes. I'm sure some of you have already done it, and I don't know the data enough, but I felt that this was a very good example to give for this particular question. We have a big contact center out of India, and lot of calls, about 40 million calls every year, and 5 million chats. That's the number of customer interactions we have. And again, anybody's guess, but I'm not going to take the name. One of our competitor in the world market faced huge scrutiny because of the issues in their sales process. And our customer service also has an upsell and a cross-sell process. We didn't want to go through that. So we had a process earlier by which we used to check 4 transactions, 4 interactions, whether it is a phone or a chat, per customer care professional per month, and a sample-based testing of whether they are selling correctly or not, whether they are doing right customer service or not. And it's a first line of defense, so it is still a GRC as we are classified. in American Express, so it used to come to us. So what we did was we used natural language processing. First of all, we're using a technology to convert phone conversation into text. And your chats are already in the text form. What we're doing is we are monitoring that using an NLP solution. And today, what we are able to do is 100% of our interactions are automatically checked. So we don't have to be sample-based. Of course, that was a huge journey. Earlier there were a lot of false positive. Every technology that you try to implement, AI, ML, it starts with type 1 and type 2 errors, right? False positives and false negatives. We took time, but eventually it is pretty acceptable to our regulators to say that, hey, I can do exhaustive testing on every interaction to check the people who have so much access to the information, what are they doing?
Yep.
So I think that was a great example I thought of using the emerging technology.
Yeah, thank you very much for calling that out. I mean, we're certainly seeing that evolution from sample-based controls monitoring to continuous monitoring play out. David mentioned just earlier one of our new offerings around third-party security risk monitoring, which actually gives our customers that continuous monitoring view of their vendors' third-party security, which has classically been something that might only be done once a year over a spreadsheet activity, let alone something that's done through continuous security testing. So definitely seeing that closed loop coming back around. I want to switch topics a little bit and talk about some of your adventures in governance, risk, compliance, not just digital transformation. But with so much change taking place in the industry, what do you see as the linkage between governance, risk, and compliance, and more specifically GRC technology and business strategy?
So I think the way I have worked already always is that GRC or information security is an enabler. And that is how I've always worked. So a couple of examples that I wanted to give was, we worked with a bank in 2009. Again, to RSA folks, it will be an open secret which bank I'm talking about. But the bank was basically had a challenge with the frauds. And frauds they were not able to control. They came to RSA. RSA adaptive authentication solution was implemented. I was part of RSA at that time. And not just the fraud went down, the key concern that they had was our number of internet banking users is going to go down. Because now you're going to have additional security mechanism that is going to deter the customer from coming onto our website. But the good news was that, in fact, it was looked upon as a positive by the customer, and the internet banking customer users of that bank grew much faster than the industry. I understand 2008 to 2010, every bank grew their online banking customers. But this bank grew at much faster rate, triple the rate of some of the average of the industry. That happened only because of using the technology. So you're looking at the technology, information security, or GRC as an enabler. And if you look at it as an enabler, it can be a great changer. Yeah. We are looking in American Express also to enable newer and newer customer journeys. How many of you know the penny drop address, a penny drop verification of your account? So if you attach your account to, and you want to check whether it indeed belongs to you, there's a penny drop process. It didn't exist earlier. Right? And it's only because we looked at the technology and a GRC led that initiative to work with other banks to come out with this. I think eventually we have a penny drop across the globe, which is acceptable, a customer journey, which 10 years ago was not possible to even think about.
Yeah, I think the penny definitely drops for the business when you can get that triple win of reducing your risk posture, delivering
right?
Delivering a good outcome for your customer, a better user experience, and actually driving more business as a result of it. Very cool. Are there any best practices that you could share with other organizations, perhaps some of those in the room right now, who are considering adopting GRC or integrated risk technology?
So I think a couple of points that I wanted to talk to you about was, and I was watching some of the sessions, some of the presentations that are happening outside of the room. And one conversation struck me. Somebody was saying that, how does the risk management work inside the Archer, right? I think my question is, don't look at what Archer is giving. When you choose the tool, look at how flexible is tool to give you the, to put your own framework, because the frameworks are available in the market. You may be an organization which is trying to implement operational risk on Archer, or in your GRC tool. I mean, I don't want to say Archer alone, but in your GRC tool.
It's fine, you can say RSA Archer alone, that's okay.
I want to be product agnostic, but I think when you evaluate a tool, look at the flexibility, whether they are allowing you to put a framework of choice. You may be an organization which is implementing operational risk where the risk event determines the probability. How many times the event has happened in the past, and therefore my probability is high or low. Take that to information security. We can't wait until the event happens. Day zero, right? So I can't use the same framework that ops risk uses. Can your GRC tool give you opportunity to have two frameworks configured side by side? So you are the product owners, not RSA Archer. RSA Archer is a technology provider. So you look at yourself as a product owner, look at Archer as your Scrum team, right, which gives you the functionality, and it has got a low-touch platform. So and now BPM tools are talking about they being low-touch platform. Some of these RSA Archer-like tools have been low-touch from 2005, and there's no more a differentiator for that.
Yeah.
So I think that is how we should look at the flexibility of how you can implement, how many use cases you can implement, and whether you are reliant on others or can your team yourself do it. With Archer you can, right? Many times when I was in RSA Archer, we get bought because the CISO team was capable of making changes to the tool. They didn't have to rely on anyone else.
Yep.
And I think that is what you should look at. The flexibility is one of the biggest factor.
Okay. Thank you very much for calling that out. I mean, David Walter mentioned it just before that, we inherently have a platform that is configurable because we know that no two organizations manage risk in the same way. A good colleague of mine used to say, you put two risk managers in the same room, ask them to draw up their risk process, you get 3 different processes, right? So no offense to any risk managers in the room, hopefully.
But I just want to make one kind of a disclaimer here. So I'm not representing American Express. American Express will not recommend RSA Archer or anything else. It's in my personal capacity. I've been an Archer professional for a while. So don't take it as a Amex recommended tool because it isn't. Amex doesn't recommend anything. So.
There you go, shout out to Amex. All right, I want to bring it to a close with a couple of questions, thinking about the future. All right, so we're talking about this change that we're all going through at the moment with digital transformation, but legs ahead. Do you have any predictions for the future when it comes to digital risks in the future?
So there's a cyber law event later this, and I was just thinking about what might be presented there, and I'm thinking about attending. I don't know whether I'll attend it or not, but a couple of things that I feel are going to be extremely important for us as a risk management community, because we are part of a larger risk management community, is that technologies like AI are going to change the way we assess the risk. I mean, AI is going to change everything, including risk assessment, right? I mean, there are two areas in risk assessment, the ethical part of it and the social aspect of it. Today, if the data that you're feeding into your AI system is not a data which covers the entire set of representative user base, your AI is going to be biased, right? Who is making that assessment when you're implementing AI? It's a shiny object, everybody's running after it right now. Who is doing that assessment? Nobody's doing that assessment. It's after the fact assessment. The other part is the social. I mean, in your organization, when you're implementing AI, is going to make some of your colleagues redundant. Let's face it. What is the social assessment that you're doing? Who is going to do it? If you go and ask a IT risk assessor today, they're going to say that ethical and social is out of my scope. So do we have to create a framework which takes care of these aspects from a future standpoint? Because if not we, who is going to take care of it?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, more and more organizations are talking about sustainability. Certainly for the younger generations coming through, things like ethical conduct and the social responsibility of an organization are very, very key to wanting to work for or work with or buy products from a particular company. So that I like the tie-in there of the social piece, the social risk assessment, if you
Right.
will, for making some of these technology decisions.
So I think social, one can argue that it's not 100% IT risk, but I can say the ethical, building the ethical AI model is within the realm of IT risk, because who understands better how AI model is going to work,
Yeah.
how machine learning model is going to work.
Yeah, yeah. One final question, just to bring us home for the day, Parag. It's been wonderful speaking with you, but how can organizations like ours best help practitioners like you manage digital risk in the future?
So I think the new frameworks are going to emerge, and they're going to change every 6 months. And we're going to need the technology which is flexible enough to accommodate these changes. We also need you to bring the best practices that you've learned from the industry into the tool itself. And that is why I think, in short, the expectation from the vendors like RSA Archer or RSA Adaptive Authentication.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, luckily we've got David Walter here, our VP of Products, to hear requests like that. But thank you very much for the feedback. And with that, Parag, obviously I've had a chance to work with you many years ago in your time at RSA, and it's been truly an honor to work with you once again here on the stage at our event. So thank you so much, sir.
And thank you very much for inviting me here. So it's been a great pleasure. Thank you.